The medical bay on Haven's Rest smelled like recycled air and antiseptic, the kind of sterile environment that made everyone a little nervous. Dr. Elena Reyes had delivered 47 babies in her 12 years on this remote colony world, and she thought she'd seen everything. Tonight would prove her wrong in ways she couldn't imagine. Rebecca Mitchell gripped the sides of the medical bed, her knuckles white as another contraction hit. Her husband Jack stood beside her, whispering encouragement even though his own hands were shaking. They ran a small hydroponics farm on the edge of the settlement, growing tomatoes and lettuce for the 3,000 colonists who called this dusty rock home. Nothing fancy, nothing special. Just two ordinary people about to become parents for the first time. "You're doing great, Rebecca," Elena said, checking the monitors. Everything looked normal. Perfectly, completely normal. The baby's heartbeat was strong and steady. Just a little longer now. Jack wiped the sweat from his wife's forehead with a damp cloth. They tried for 6 years to have a child. 6 long years of disappointment and hope and trying again. This baby was everything to them, their whole world compressed into one tiny person they hadn't even met yet. When the moment finally came, Rebecca gave one last push and the baby slid into Elena's waiting hands. A girl. Healthy lungs, judging by the cry that filled the room. 10 fingers, 10 toes. Elena smiled as she began the routine cleanup, ready to hand the parents their miracle. "It's a girl," she announced, wrapping the infant in a soft blue blanket. "Congratulations, you two. She's perfect." Rebecca was crying and laughing at the same time, reaching for her daughter with trembling arms. Jack couldn't stop grinning, looking like he might pass out from sheer joy. These were the moments Elena lived for, the reminder that out here on the frontier, life still found a way to be beautiful. Then the baby opened her eyes. Elena froze. The medical assistant beside her gasped and took a step backward. Rebecca didn't notice at first, too lost in the wonder of holding her daughter, but Jack saw the change in the doctor's expression. "What?" he asked, his voice suddenly tight with fear. "What's wrong?" The baby's irises weren't blue or brown or green. They were brilliant amber with vertical slits, exactly like a cat's eye but somehow more intense. More ancient. The pupils contracted in the light, thin black lines against pools of liquid gold. Elena had seen pictures in old textbooks, archaeological files from dig sites on dead worlds. These eyes belonged to a species that shouldn't exist anymore. The Draconis. The dragons. Gone for 3,000 years. I need to run some tests, Elena managed, her professional training barely keeping her voice steady. She gently took the baby from Rebecca's arms, ignoring the mother's protest. "Just routine. I'll bring her right back." But even as she spoke, the medical bay's computer system was already flagging the anomaly. Automated sensors built into every piece of equipment had detected the genetic markers the moment the infant's eyes opened. Somewhere far above the colony, in the vast network that connected every human settlement to the Galactic Health Network, alarms were triggering. Data was being transmitted faster than light to stations and outposts across a dozen star systems. Within 20 minutes, that data reached the Galactic Council headquarters, a massive station orbiting a neutron star at the galaxy's political center. Within an hour, 7 species worth of senior politicians were abandoning their dinners and rushing to emergency chambers. Within 2 hours, they'd made a decision that would change everything. All records of the birth would be sealed. The colony's communications would be placed under blackout, isolated from the rest of human space under the guise of equipment malfunction. The child's existence would be denied. And most importantly, an enforcer would be dispatched to contain the situation before word could spread. Back in the medical bay, Rebecca was getting angry. "Where's my daughter? You said routine test. It's been 30 minutes. Jack stood up, his farmer's build suddenly seeming more intimidating in the cramped space. "Bring us our baby. Now." Elena returned with the infant, her face carefully neutral even though her mind was racing. She'd been sent a priority message on her private terminal. "Keep them calm. Keep them here. Say nothing about the eyes. Help is coming." But whose help? And help with what? Rebecca took her daughter back and the baby, they'd decided to name her Lily, made a soft cooing sound. She looked perfectly normal now, eyes closed as she nuzzled against her mother's chest. Maybe it had been a trick of the light. Maybe Elena had imagined those impossible golden eyes. Except she knew she hadn't. "Is she okay?" Rebecca asked, her voice small and frightened. "Please tell me she's okay." Elena forced a smile. "She's healthy. 10 out of 10. You've got a beautiful little girl." What she didn't say was that beautiful little girls weren't supposed to have the eyes of an extinct species. They weren't supposed to trigger emergency protocols that hadn't been used in centuries. And they definitely weren't supposed to make 7 of the galaxy's most powerful governments panic hard enough to order a communications blackout on an entire human colony. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. And somewhere among them, a ship was already changing course, carrying an operative with orders that even he didn't fully understand. All he knew was that a baby had been born on Haven's Rest, and that baby represented a threat the Galactic Council hadn't faced in 3,000 years. The kind of threat you didn't negotiate with. The kind you made disappear. 6 months had passed since Lily Mitchell came into the world, and nothing about her felt normal anymore. Not to her parents at least. Rebecca watched her daughter track a butterfly through the kitchen window with eyes that moved too fast, too precisely. Like a predator sizing up prey. Babies weren't supposed to follow movement like that. Not at 6 months. She still hasn't cried, Rebecca said quietly, bouncing Lily on her hip. Not once since we brought her home. Is that normal? Jack looked up from his data pad, where he'd been researching infant development for the 100th time. The pediatrician said some babies are just calm. Maybe we got lucky. But neither of them believed that anymore. Luck didn't explain the way Lily's eyes flashed gold in certain light. Luck didn't explain the rumbling sound that came from her chest sometimes when she was content, a deep purr that vibrated like distant thunder. And luck definitely didn't explain why armed aliens in unmarked uniforms kept showing up at their farm every week for routine health assessments. The latest team had arrived that morning. 3 of them, tall and gray-skinned with too many fingers. They spoke through translation devices that made their voices sound flat and emotionless. They measured Lily, scanned her, drew blood samples. They asked the same questions they always asked. Has she displayed any unusual behaviors? Any unexpected abilities? Has she affected electronics or animals in unusual ways? Jack had started lying 3 months ago. No, nothing unusual. She's just a normal baby. Because the truth was that their chickens formed a circle around Lily's carrier whenever she was outside. The truth was that the hydroponic system worked better when she was near it, plants growing faster and stronger. The truth was that sometimes, late at night, Rebecca would wake to find Lily's eyes open and glowing softly in the darkness, not with reflected light but with something that came from within. They were terrified. Not of their daughter but for her. Dr. Elena Reyes was terrified too, but for different reasons. She sat alone in her office after hours, the door locked and the blinds drawn, scrolling through restricted files she absolutely wasn't authorized to access. She'd been hacking into the Galactic Medical Archive for weeks now, using access codes she'd stolen from the Council's health inspectors. What she found made her wish she'd never started looking. The Draconis. The dragons. They'd been real as humans or any other species in the galaxy. Massive beings that could survive in vacuum, cross star systems under their own power, and communicate telepathically across light years. They'd been peaceful, devoted to knowledge and art and the preservation of life. Every species that had known them spoke of them with reverence. Then, 3,000 years ago, they vanished. Every single one gone in the span of a decade. The official record called it a mysterious plague. A tragedy. But Elena kept digging, following footnotes and cross-references into darker archives, and she found fragments of something else. Warnings. Prophecies. Testimony from species that no longer existed. One document made her blood run cold. It was a partial translation from a civilization that had been wiped out 2,000 years ago, their last transmission recovered from a derelict probe. The text was damaged, but enough remained to read. When the blood of stars flows through human veins, the sleeping fire shall wake, and those who silence truth shall face the mirror. Elena read it 5 times. Blood of stars. The Draconis had called themselves the children of stellar fire. And human veins. The prophecy specifically mentioned humans, a species that hadn't even achieved faster-than-light travel when it was written. How could they have known? She printed the document and immediately deleted her browsing history, her hands shaking. Something enormous was happening, something that connected Lily Mitchell to events thousands of years old. And the Galactic Council knew. They'd known from the moment that baby opened her eyes. The ship arrived on a Tuesday. No warning, no announcement. It simply appeared in orbit, a sleek black vessel without markings or identification. From it, a shuttle descended to Haven's Rest, landing near the Mitchell farm with the kind of precision that said military training. Enforcer Valen emerged first. He was Kryn, a species known for their efficiency and lack of emotional expression. His skin was pale blue, his eyes solid black, and he moved like violence waiting to happen. 2 soldiers flanked him as he approached the farmhouse door. Jack opened it before they could knock. He'd seen them land. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for the child," Valen said. No introduction, no pleasantries. His translator rendered his voice as cold and mechanical. You will surrender her immediately. This is not negotiable. Rebecca appeared behind Jack, Lily clutched tight against her chest. The baby was awake, those golden eyes fixed on the stranger at their door. You're not taking our daughter. This is a matter of galactic security, Valen continued, stepping forward. His soldiers moved with him, hands resting on weapons. The entity you're harboring poses a significant threat. It must be transferred to a secure facility for observation and potential neutralization. Jack felt something snap inside him. Entity. Not baby, not child. Entity. Like Lily was some kind of object or weapon. He stepped fully into the doorway, blocking the entrance with his body. I don't care what your reasons are. I don't care what you think she is. She's our daughter and you're not taking her. You want her, you'll have to go through me. For a long moment, nobody moved. Valen studied Jack with those expressionless black eyes, calculating odds and outcomes. He'd killed before many times. This farmer would be easy. Quick. The mission parameters allowed for acceptable losses among colonists if necessary. He reached for his weapon. That's when Lily's eyes flashed. Not just a reflection or a trick of light. They blazed with inner fire, brilliant amber turning almost white with intensity. The air itself seemed to ripple around her. Valen stumbled backward like he'd been struck. His weapon clattered to the ground. His soldiers rushed to support him as he fell to one knee, gasping. For just an instant he'd seen something. Not with his eyes but deeper, in whatever part of him still remembered what it felt like to be innocent. He'd seen himself through Lily's eyes. He saw a killer approaching a family. He saw a man following orders without question, orders to harm a child. He saw 20 years of missions and eliminated targets and problems that had been solved with violence. He saw what he'd become. The shame hit him like a physical weight, crushing and absolute. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. In 20 years of service he'd never hesitated, never doubted. Now he couldn't breathe. Retreat, he managed, his voice cracking. Back to the shuttle. We're leaving. His soldiers exchanged confused glances but obeyed. They supported their commander back across the dusty field, leaving Jack and Rebecca standing in their doorway, stunned and confused. Lily made a soft cooing sound, her eyes already fading back to their normal one impossible child, and rippled outward until nothing would ever be the same. The morning after Enforcer Valen retreated, something strange began happening across Haven's Rest. Parents woke to find their children different. Not dramatically, not obviously, but enough to notice if you looked close. Katie Torres brought her 3-year-old son Tommy to Dr. Elena's clinic first thing. Look at his eyes, she said, her voice shaking slightly. They were brown yesterday. Solid brown. Now there's this amber ring around the pupils. Elena examined the boy carefully. Tommy giggled and played with her stethoscope, acting like any normal toddler. But Katie was right. The inner edge of his irises had changed color overnight, a thin band of golden amber that definitely hadn't been there before. By noon, Elena had seen 12 more children. All under 5 years old. All showing the same change. Amber creeping into eyes that had been blue or brown or green their whole lives. The parents were confused, worried, but not panicking. Not yet. These were frontier colonists, practical people who'd learned to handle strange situations. But Elena knew this was bigger than a local medical anomaly. This was spreading. Daniel Harris watched his 2-year-old daughter Grace touch a dying plant on their windowsill. The poor thing had been brown and crispy for weeks, forgotten in the chaos of daily life. Grace reached out with one chubby hand and rested it against the dry soil. She hummed softly, a melody that seemed too complex for a child her age. The plant shuddered. Green spread through the brown leaves like water soaking into paper. Within seconds the plant stood upright, vibrant and healthy, even sprouting new growth. Daniel stared, his coffee mug frozen halfway to his mouth. Grace clapped her hands and laughed, delighted with her accomplishment. "Honey," he called to his wife in the next room, his voice strangled. "You need to see this." Across town, in the colony's small community center, something even stranger was happening. 15 children were playing together while their parents attended a meeting about water rations. The kids ranged from 18 months to 4 years old, the usual chaotic energy of toddlers at play. Then, without any obvious signal, they all stopped at the same moment. They turned to face east toward the Mitchell farm 3 miles away. For 30 seconds they stood perfectly still and silent, their eyes distant. Several showed those telltale amber rings. Then, as suddenly as it started, the moment passed. The children went back to playing like nothing had happened. But their parents had noticed. Everyone had noticed. Dr. Elena worked through the night, running genetic scans on the samples she'd collected. What she found made no sense according to everything she'd learned in medical school. The children's DNA was changing, rewriting itself in real time. Dormant sequences were activating, sequences that looked like junk code but were actually incredibly complex genetic instructions. Instructions that had been hidden in human DNA for thousands of years, waiting for something to wake them up. She pulled up Lily Mitchell's original birth records, the ones she'd secretly copied before they were sealed. The baby's genetic code was like a key, a catalyst. Her presence was triggering these dormant sequences in other children. It wasn't contagious in the traditional sense. It was more like remembering. Like humanity was remembering something it had forgotten a very long time ago. Elena's hands shook as she typed up her findings. She needed to tell someone, but who? The Galactic Council had already demonstrated they'd rather silence the truth than face it. The colonial government was isolated under the communications blackout. She was alone with knowledge that could change everything. Her computer chimed with an incoming message. Priority channel encrypted. It was from Valen, the enforcer who'd tried to take Lily. Elena almost deleted it, but curiosity won out. Dr. Reyes, the message read. I know you're researching what's happening. I need you to understand the danger. The Council has deployed a full military blockade around your world. They're preparing for quarantine protocols. In 72 hours, they plan to evacuate Haven's Rest and classify everyone as contaminated. Those who resist will be detained indefinitely. The children especially. I'm sending this because that baby showed me something I'd forgotten. She showed me who I used to be before I became what the Council made me. Please protect them. Protect all of them. I can't stop what's coming, but maybe you can warn people. Maybe you can give them a chance to choose. Elena read the message 3 times before it self-deleted. 72 hours. 3 days before the Council made their move. She looked at the genetic data on her screen, at the evidence of something miraculous happening to human children. They weren't becoming monsters or weapons. They were becoming something more, something that bridged the gap between what humanity was and what the ancient dragons had been. She made a decision. She copied everything to a portable drive, encrypted it 6 different ways and headed for the Mitchell farm. If anyone deserved to know the truth, it was the parents of the child who started all this. Jack and Rebecca were in their greenhouse when Elena arrived, Lily sleeping peacefully in a carrier nearby. The baby was growing fast, too fast, but she looked content. The tomato plants around her carrier were massive, producing fruit twice the normal size. We need to talk, Elena said. And you need to hear everything. She told them about the genetic changes, about the other children, about the prophecy she'd found. She told them what Valen had warned her. The Mitchells listened in growing horror, Rebecca clutching Jack's hand so tight her knuckles turned white. They're going to take her, Rebecca whispered. They're going to take all of them. Not if we can help it, Jack said, his jaw set. He looked at Elena. What do we do? Before she could answer, something happened. Lily stirred in her carrier, her eyes opening. She looked up at the sky through the greenhouse's clear panels. And then she reached upward with one small hand, fingers stretching toward the stars beyond the atmosphere. A pulse of energy radiated outward. They felt it in their bones, in their teeth, a vibration that passed through matter like it wasn't even there. Above them, invisible to their eyes but very real, the Council's blockade fleet suddenly went dark. Every ship, every weapon system, every piece of military hardware in orbit around Haven's Rest simply stopped working. Emergency lights flickered on across dozens of vessels. Admirals shouted orders that couldn't be executed. Engineers frantically tried to restart systems that refused to respond. And on every ship, every AI system displayed the same message in a child's voice. Aggression denied. Innocence protected. In the greenhouse, Lily yawned and closed her eyes, already drifting back to sleep. She had no idea what she'd just done. She was barely a year old. She just knew that people were trying to hurt her family, and something deep inside her had responded. Something ancient and powerful and absolutely certain that children should be protected, not threatened. Rebecca picked up her daughter and held her close, tears streaming down her face. What is she? Elena looked at the sleeping baby, at the impossible child who just disabled an entire fleet without even trying. She's the answer to a question humanity didn't know it was asking. And I think she's just getting started. Outside, colonists were emerging from their homes, staring at the sky. They couldn't see the disabled ships, but they'd felt something. A change in the air, a shift in reality itself. Parents held their children closer, those children with amber creeping into their eyes. The awakening had begun. and the galaxy would never be the same. Retry. The council chambers felt colder than usual. Ambassador Corinne stood before the assembled representatives of 7 species, his ancient frame trembling slightly. He was the eldest among them, old enough to remember when the lie began. Old enough to carry the weight of what they'd done 5,000 years ago. "The fleet is disabled," he said, his voice carrying the rasp of centuries. "One child. One human infant did what no military force in the galaxy has accomplished in 3,000 years. She rendered our most advanced warships completely inert without harming a single crew member." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted over each other in a dozen different languages, their translators struggling to keep up. Fear filled the room like smoke, thick and choking. They'd spent millennia making sure this day would never come. They'd buried evidence, silenced witnesses, rewritten history itself. And now a baby had undone everything. "We should have eliminated the colony the moment the child was born," snarled Representative Dax, his scales rippling with agitation. "Precision strike. Make it look like a reactor malfunction. Claim. Final. And create martyrs?" Corinne shot back. "Start a war with humanity? They're the fastest growing species in the galaxy. 400 colonies and counting. You want to explain to them why we incinerated 3,000 of their people including children? Then what do you suggest? We're out of options. The truth is spreading. Within days, every human settlement will know what their children are becoming." Corinne closed his eyes. He'd known this moment would come eventually. Lies always came due. We tell them the truth. All of it. Before someone else does. The chamber fell silent. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Corinne activated the public broadcast system, the one that reached every settled world in the galaxy. There was no going back now. "People of the galaxy," he began, his voice transmitted to billions of beings across thousands of light years. "I am Ambassador Corinne of the Galactic Council. What I'm about to tell you has been classified for 5,000 years. It's time you knew what we did. It's time you understood why we're so afraid of one human child." On Haven's Rest, Jack and Rebecca gathered with other colonists around a communal screen. Lily dozed in her mother's arms, unaware that an ambassador from across the galaxy was about to explain why she existed. "The Draconis were real," Corinne said. "The dragons. They didn't die from plague or natural disaster. We killed them. Or rather, we tried to." He explained how the dragons had discovered the Council's secret genocide program 5,000 years ago. How the founding species had been quietly eliminating civilizations they deemed inferior, erasing them from existence and blaming nature. 37 species wiped out over 2 millennia. Billions of lives snuffed out because they were considered evolutionary dead ends. "The dragons gave us an ultimatum," Corinne continued, his voice heavy with shame. "Stop the genocide or face consequences. We chose a third option. We created a biological weapon specifically designed to target Draconis DNA. We deployed it simultaneously on 12 of their homeworlds." Rebecca felt sick. She looked down at Lily, at her innocent sleeping face. This beautiful baby was connected to a genocide that happened before human civilization even existed. "But the dragons were more advanced than we understood," Corinne said. "When our weapon activated, they didn't die. They transcended. Their physical bodies dissolved into pure energy and vanished into the cosmic background. We thought we'd won. We thought they were gone forever." The ambassador paused, and when he spoke again, his voice cracked with something that might have been regret. "We were wrong. They left behind a failsafe. They'd scattered their DNA across dozens of species through millennia of peaceful contact. Hidden in genetic sequences that looked harmless. Dormant. Waiting." Dr. Elena stood in her clinic, listening with tears streaming down her face. She'd pieced together parts of this story, but hearing it confirmed was something else entirely. The prophecy made sense now. The dragons had known that someday, somewhere, their genetic legacy would wake up in a species that needed it. A species that the Council might threaten next. The failsafe was designed to activate if we ever attempted another extinction-level action, Corinne explained. Quarantining Haven's Rest qualified. That human child, Lily Mitchell, carries the highest concentration of Draconis DNA we've ever encountered. Her existence is waking up dormant markers in other human children. Not replacing their humanity but adding to it. Making them bridges between what you are and what the dragons were. Across the galaxy, humans listened in stunned silence. In ships and stations and colonies spread across 1,000 worlds, parents looked at their children with new understanding. Those strange amber eyes weren't a disease or mutation. They were a gift from a species that had died protecting others. On Haven's Rest, 3-year-old Tommy Harris sat with his mother, his eyes showing those distinctive amber rings. "Mama," he said quietly, "I can hear them. The sleeping ones. They're not gone. They're waiting." Katie held her son close, not understanding but believing him anyway. Waiting for what, baby? For us to remember. For us to be kind like they were. Back in the council chambers, Corinne was finishing his confession. The children aren't weapons. They're not a threat. They're proof that the dragons forgave us even as we murdered them. They left behind the best parts of themselves and species across the galaxy, including humanity. They trusted that someday, you'd be better than we were. He looked directly into the camera, his ancient eyes reflecting the weight of 5,000 years of guilt. We were afraid because we knew what we'd done. We knew that if the dragon's legacy awakened, it would remember. Not with vengeance, but with clarity. It would show the galaxy what we really are. What we've been hiding behind diplomatic language and classified files. Representative Dax stood abruptly. "You've doomed us all. The moment humans fully realize what they're becoming, they'll want revenge for what we tried to do to that child." "No," said a new voice. Everyone turned. On the main screen, a human woman appeared. Rebecca Mitchell holding baby Lily. Somehow she'd hijacked the broadcast, piggybacking on Corinne's signal. Jack stood beside her, his farmer's hand steady on his wife's shoulder. "We don't want revenge," Rebecca said, her voice clear and strong. "We want our children to grow up safe. We want the truth. And we want a galaxy where nobody ever has to hide what they are again." Lily stirred in her mother's arms, golden eyes opening to look directly at the camera. For just a moment, everyone watching felt something. Not words, not thoughts, but pure emotion. Forgiveness. Understanding. The kind of compassion that doesn't forget wrongs but refuses to be defined by them. Corinne felt tears on his face for the first time in centuries. "What do we do now?" Rebecca smiled, sad but hopeful. "Now you let us help you be better. That's what the dragons wanted. That's what our children are for. They're not here to replace anyone or punish anyone. They're here to remind us all what we could be if we tried." Across Haven's Rest, human parents held their changing children and understood. The awakening wasn't about power or revenge. It was about second chances. The dragons had given humanity a gift wrapped in their own DNA, a gift that said even in the face of genocide, they still believed someone could do better. The council had feared the truth. But the truth, it turned out, was kinder than they deserved. Retries. 3 days after Ambassador Corinne's confession shook the galaxy, Haven's Rest looked like an armed camp. Council ground forces surrounded the settlement, their weapons trained on homes where families huddled together. The commanders had received orders to extract the anomalous children by force if necessary. Galactic security, they called it. Protection of the established order. Jack Mitchell stood at his living room window, watching soldiers take positions around the perimeter. Rebecca sat on the couch behind him, Lily on her lap. The baby was almost 18 months old now, growing impossibly fast. She watched the soldiers with those golden eyes, curious but unafraid. "They're really going to try," Rebecca whispered. "After everything that happened, they're still going to try to take her." Jack turned from the window. His hands were steady but his heart hammered in his chest. "Then we don't give them the choice. We go out there. All of us. Every parent, every child. Let them look at what they're threatening." Within an hour, word had spread through the colony. Parents gathered their children and walked toward the center of town. Katie Torres held 3-year-old Tommy's hand. Daniel Harris carried 2-year-old Grace on his shoulders. Dozens of families, dozens of children with amber in their eyes, all converging on the town square where council forces waited. The soldiers shifted uncomfortably as civilians approached. This wasn't what they trained for. Suppressing armed rebellions, sure. Extracting dangerous targets from hostile zones, absolutely. But facing down parents holding toddlers? That was different. Jack and Rebecca led the group, Lily walking between them on unsteady legs. The baby took careful steps, concentrating on each one like it was the most important thing in the world. When they reached the center of the square, maybe 50 feet from the nearest soldiers, they stopped. Commander Tren stepped forward. He was Verosi, a species known for their rigid adherence to protocol. "You are in violation of quarantine orders. Surrender the affected children immediately. This is your final warning." "No," Jack said simply. His voice didn't shake. "These are our kids. You want them, you'll have to go through every parent here." The soldiers raised their weapons. Parents held their children closer. For a moment, everything balanced on a knife's edge. Then Lily pulled free from her mother's hand. "Lily, no." Rebecca reached for her, but the toddler was already walking forward, her steps more confident now. She walked right toward the line of armed soldiers, a baby in a yellow dress who barely came up to their knees. Enforcer Valen stood among the council forces. He'd been reassigned to the ground team after his failure to extract the child 6 months ago. When he saw Lily walking toward them, something twisted in his chest. Not the shame from before, but something worse. Recognition. This was the moment his superiors expected him to prove his loyalty. To show that one glance from a baby hadn't broken him. He stepped forward, weapon raised. Stop. Don't come any closer. Lily kept walking. She wasn't being defiant or brave. She was just being a kid, curious about the strange people in their scary uniforms. When she got within 10 feet, she stopped and looked up at Valen. Really looked at him. And then she smiled. It wasn't a special smile or a magical smile. It was just the smile of a happy toddler who didn't understand hate or politics or galactic security. Pure innocence, offered freely to someone who'd come to harm her. Valen's weapon fell from suddenly nerveless fingers. Around him, other soldiers were lowering their weapons too. They couldn't explain it, couldn't put it into words, but they all felt the same thing. Not telepathy or mind control. Something simpler and more powerful. They saw themselves through a child's eyes. They saw what they were doing, who they were threatening. They saw fathers and mothers and kids who just wanted to live their lives. And they saw that following orders wasn't the same thing as doing right. A Kryn soldier dropped to his knees first. Then a Varosi. Then 3 more. Weapons clattered to the ground. Commander Tren watched his unit fall apart with something like horror on his face. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Pick up your weapons. That's an order." "No, sir," said a young Talveen soldier, her voice shaking but firm. "I didn't join the service to threaten babies. I joined to protect people. And right now these people need protecting from us." Valen looked down at Lily. The baby had lost interest in the soldiers and was now examining an interesting rock on the ground. He remembered the man he'd been before 20 years of military service. He remembered wanting to help people, to make the galaxy safer for families like his own. When had that turned into this? When had he become the threat instead of the shield? "Stand down," he said quietly. Then louder to the entire unit. "Everyone stand down. Lower your weapons." Commander Tren's face flushed with anger. "You're all committing treason. The council will." "The council can court-martial me if they want," Valen interrupted. "I don't care anymore. I'm not doing this. Not to kids. Never again." The standoff collapsed like a house of cards. Soldiers moved away from their positions, some sitting down right where they stood, others walking toward the colonists with their hands raised in peace. Parents wept with relief. Children, sensing the change, started playing again like nothing had happened. Rebecca scooped up Lily and held her tight, her whole body shaking. Jack wrapped his arms around both of them, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. But this was only Haven's rest. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on 100 human worlds. Council forces trying to enforce quarantines, human parents refusing to give up their children. And in every case, when the soldiers actually saw the kids they were supposed to detain, something broke. The orders didn't make sense anymore. The mission felt wrong. Within a week, the Council's authority had crumbled. Not through violence or revolution, but through simple refusal. Species that had followed Council leadership for millennia started asking questions. If they'd lied about the dragons, what else had they lied about? If they'd tried to genocide dozens of species, how could anyone trust them to govern fairly? The Council dissolved not with a bang but with a whimper. Representatives resigned. Fleets returned to their home worlds. The massive station that had been their headquarters sat empty, a monument to power that had outlived its legitimacy. In its place, something new emerged. The new Federation, they called it. A government built on transparency instead of secrets, on cooperation instead of domination. And at the heart of it, a new role that nobody had anticipated. Human children with dragon eyes became mediators. Not because of special powers or abilities, but because their presence reminded everyone of compassion. When negotiations got heated, when old grudges threatened new peace, having a child in the room changed things. Made people remember what they were supposed to be protecting. Lily Mitchell grew up attending schools on a dozen different worlds. She made friends with Kryn kids and Talveen kids and species that hadn't even had names in human databases. She was normal in all the ways that mattered, struggling with math homework and scraped knees and first crushes. But she also carried something special, a genetic memory of beings who'd chosen mercy over revenge. On her 20th birthday, Lily stood before the new Federation as its youngest ambassador. Jack and Rebecca watched from the gallery, their hair graying now but their pride unmistakable. Their daughter had grown into a remarkable young woman, confident and kind in equal measure. "The dragons didn't leave us," Lily told the assembled representatives. "They left us something better than themselves. They left us the choice to be more than we are. My parents taught me that love is fierce enough to stare down warships. The dragons taught me that forgiveness is strong enough to change history. Together we're going to make sure nobody forgets either lesson." In the back of the chamber, Valen stood in his new role as Minister of Reconciliation. He'd spent the last 19 years making amends, helping species the Council had wronged, ensuring the truth stayed known. When Lily finished speaking, he found himself smiling through tears. That baby who'd changed his life with one innocent glance was now changing the galaxy with words just as powerful. After the session, reporters crowded around. "Ambassador Mitchell, some say humans are becoming the new dominant species. Your response?" Lily laughed. "We're not trying to dominate anyone. We're just trying to be decent. That's what the dragons wanted. Not superiority, just the courage to be kind when it's hard." That night, back on Haven's Rest for a visit, Lily sat with her parents on the porch of their old farmhouse. The hydroponics farm still produced the best tomatoes in the sector. Something's never changed. "You did good today, sweetheart," Jack said, putting his arm around his daughter. Rebecca smiled. "We're so proud of you. Both of us." Lily leaned against her father's shoulder, watching the stars come out. Somewhere out there, in the spaces between galaxies, the dragons existed as pure energy. Watching. Waiting. Hoping that their gift would help someone build something better. "Mom, Dad?" Lily said quietly. "Thank you for not letting them take me. For standing up when it was scary." "Always," Rebecca promised. "That's what parents do. That's what anyone should do when kids need protecting." And across the galaxy, in homes on 1,000 different worlds, parents tucked in their children and thought the same thing. The age of secrets and fear was over. The new dawn had come, brought by ordinary people who'd simply refused to let the powerful hurt the innocent. Turned out that was all it took. That was all it had ever taken. Just people being brave enough to be kind.